How comfortable are you when it comes to discussing money in English? Do you know the right phrases to use when talking about finances, investments, or even simple purchases? Money is a topic we all deal with, but it can be tricky to find the right words, especially when you're speaking a second language. In today's episode, we'll help you navigate financial discussions by teaching you the vocabulary and phrases you need to sound confident and fluent in these situations. This episode is perfect for advanced English learners who want to take their language skills to the next level. As you listen, you'll improve both your listening and writing skills. The more you listen to real-life conversations, the better you'll understand how to use the right words and expressions in context. Let's begin with a story from Anna, an experienced financial consultant. A few years ago, Anna was helping a client who was trying to decide whether to invest in stocks or real estate. The conversation started with some basic questions about her client's financial goals, but it quickly turned into a deeper discussion about the risks and benefits of each option. Anna found herself explaining financial terms like liquidity, capital gains, and diversification. At first, her client seemed confused, but after Anna took the time to explain the terminology and give real-life examples, the conversation became clearer. Anna's experience highlights how important it is to understand the specific vocabulary and phrases that come up in financial discussions. Whether you're talking about personal finances, business investments, or even international markets, the language used in these conversations is crucial. Listening to real-life stories like Anna's helps you become familiar with these terms and learn how to use them effectively. In fact, just last month, I had a similar conversation with my friend Mark, who works in financial planning. We were discussing the importance of managing debt. Mark used phrases like credit score, interest rates, and debt-to-income ratio, which are key concepts in financial planning. As I listened to him, I realized how important it is to have the right vocabulary at hand to discuss these topics clearly and confidently. By the end of this episode, you'll not only have a better understanding of financial vocabulary, but you'll also feel more confident when discussing money in English, whether it's with a colleague, a client, or even a friend. So, let's dive into these essential phrases and start mastering the language of money. As Anna continued her conversation with her client, she noticed that breaking down complex terms into simpler, everyday language made a huge difference. For example, when she mentioned capital gains as a potential source of income from an investment, the client looked puzzled. Instead of diving deeper into technical definitions, Anna explained, "Capital gains are simply the profit you make when you sell something for more than you bought it for, like selling a house or a stock." The client's face lit up with understanding. Anna also gave real-world examples to make things even clearer, like explaining how buying a car at a low price and later selling it for a higher price can result in capital gains. The point here is that understanding and using financial vocabulary is not just about learning words. It's about being able to explain complex ideas in a way that's accessible and relatable to others. This is a skill that's essential, especially when discussing money, which can sometimes feel like a complicated or intimidating topic. One thing I've noticed in financial conversations, especially in business meetings or casual chats with friends, is the importance of tone. It's not just about what words we use, but how we use them. For instance, in a recent discussion with a colleague about budgeting, he casually mentioned, "I'm looking at cutting down on unnecessary expenses to improve my savings rate." That one sentence included several key phrases: cutting down on unnecessary expenses and savings rate, but what made it stand out was the ease with which he delivered it. He used natural language that sounded comfortable, not stiff or overly formal. Listening to conversations like this will help you pick up these subtle yet important communication skills. It's not just about memorizing vocabulary. It's about understanding how to make financial discussions feel natural and engaging. You can learn to incorporate phrases like long-term investment, debt consolidation, passive income, and emergency fund into your own speech in a way that sounds fluid, even if you're just discussing your own financial goals with a friend. Let me share a quick story from my own experience. A while ago, I was talking to a friend who works in the stock market. We were discussing how to get started with investing, and he shared a piece of advice I will never forget. Start small. Diversify your investments and don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's a simple phrase, but it's packed with meaning, and it's widely used in financial conversations. It teaches you about spreading your investments to reduce risk. He also mentioned how important it is to have an emergency fund before making any risky investments. The idea of having a safety net for unexpected situations was something that helped me feel more secure about my own financial planning. Using these kinds of phrases and being able to understand them when you hear them in conversations will help you sound more confident when talking about money. The more you practice listening to these terms in real-life situations, the better you'll be at using them in your own speech. Listening to podcasts and conversations, like the one we're having right now, provides you with the context needed to grasp these phrases and how they're used naturally. You can also start incorporating these terms into your own daily conversations, whether you're discussing your budget, savings, or investments with friends or colleagues. Over time, you'll notice how much easier it becomes to engage in discussions about money without feeling overwhelmed. So, why is it so important to master these financial phrases? Well, money is something we all talk about. It's a part of everyday life. Whether you're talking about the cost of living, saving for a vacation, managing a business, or discussing personal finances, the vocabulary and phrases you use can greatly influence how effectively you communicate your ideas. The better you understand and use financial terminology, the more confident and clear you'll be in your conversations. This is why today's episode focuses on helping you feel more comfortable with this essential vocabulary. And as we continue, we'll introduce even more phrases and expressions that will make you sound like a pro when talking about money. Listening to real-life examples in this podcast will not only help you understand the terms we discuss, but will also allow you to see how native speakers use them in natural conversations. You'll hear the difference between formal business discussions and more casual chats about finances, and you'll understand the context in which certain phrases are used. Whether you're speaking with colleagues, friends, or even strangers, these skills will help you navigate all types of financial conversations confidently and with ease. So, let's continue to explore more essential vocabulary and phrases that will take your financial discussions to the next level. As we continue this conversation, let's dive deeper into some key vocabulary that is often used in discussions about money, finance, and investments. Imagine you are having a conversation with a colleague about how to budget for a large project at work. The first phrase that often comes up is cost analysis. This is a simple way of saying that you're evaluating how much a project or a task will cost. Understanding this phrase can be especially useful if you're working in a business or corporate environment. For example, when you're planning a company event or launching a new product, you'll need to perform a cost analysis to estimate how much everything will cost. You might say, "We need to do a cost analysis before we proceed with the event." In this case, you're assessing potential costs and making sure the budget is reasonable. Similarly, profit margin is another key term you will likely encounter in both business and personal finance. It refers to the difference between the cost of producing something and the price at which it is sold. It's a measure of how much money you make after covering the costs of production. For example, If you are selling a product and your expenses to make it were $10, but you sold it for $20, your profit margin is $10. Knowing how to use this phrase in conversations can help you communicate clearly when discussing pricing or evaluating whether a business is profitable. You might hear someone say, "Our profit margin is higher than expected this quarter," which indicates that the company is making more money than anticipated. Let's move to another area, credit and loans. These are topics that come up in financial conversations all the time. The phrase credit score is essential. This number represents how reliable you are when it comes to borrowing money. The higher your credit score, the more trustworthy you are seen by banks and other lenders. For example, someone with a credit score of 750 or above is usually considered excellent in terms of borrowing. However, a lower score might mean higher interest rates or difficulty getting approved for loans. If you're applying for a loan to buy a house or a car, understanding and discussing your credit score is a vital part of the conversation. Another important concept related to borrowing money is interest rates. These are the extra amount you pay on top of the money you've borrowed, often represented as a percentage. For example, if you take out a loan for $1,000 with an interest rate of 5%, you'll need to pay back $150 over time. You might have heard the phrase, "the interest rates have increased," which indicates that the cost of borrowing money has gone up. This can affect people who are planning to buy homes, take out student loans, or even purchase a car. Understanding how interest rates work is key to making informed financial decisions. Now, let's consider a more personal story from one of my own experiences. A few years ago, I decided to buy a new laptop for work, and like many people, I didn't have all the money up front. So I applied for a financing option at the store. The store offered me a payment plan, but the interest rate was high. I had to do some quick calculations to determine if this was a good deal for me. The terms of the loan included an interest rate of 15%, which meant I'd end up paying significantly more for the laptop over time. This situation taught me the importance of checking the annual percentage rate, or APR, when considering loans. APR includes both the interest rate and any additional fees, so it gives you a clearer picture of the total cost. Understanding financial terms like interest rates, APR, credit score, and profit margins helps you navigate the complex world of money more confidently. As you learn to use these terms in your own conversations, you'll be able to discuss personal and business finances with ease. These phrases aren't just about understanding the financial world. They're about feeling confident and comfortable. When talking about money, whether you're having a casual conversation or negotiating a major business deal, the more you listen to real-life examples like this, the better you'll get at using them in your own life. In addition, knowing the right vocabulary helps you avoid misunderstandings. Let's say you're talking to a friend about saving for retirement, and you use the term compound interest. This concept refers to the process where the money you earn from interest also earns interest over time. For example, if you invest $100 in an account that gives you 5% annual interest, you'll earn $5 in the first year. But in the second year, you'll earn interest not only on your initial $100, but also on the $5 you earned in the first year. Compound interest allows your money to grow exponentially over time, which is why it's important to learn and use this term when discussing savings or investment options. When I was learning about compound interest, I found it helpful to hear examples in conversations with financial experts. They explained how investing in stocks, for example, can lead to high returns over time if you reinvest your profits, rather than cashing them out. Imagine if you had invested in a small tech company 10 years ago and just kept reinvesting the money you earned. You would have earned compound interest on those investments, and could have built a much larger portfolio. It's these types of real-world examples that make financial vocabulary not only easier to understand, but also more relevant to your life. In conclusion, the goal of learning financial vocabulary is not just to memorize terms, but to understand how they apply to real-life situations. Whether you're managing your personal budget, discussing investments with friends, or negotiating deals in a business context, knowing how to use these phrases can make a big difference. Listening to podcasts like this, where we break down complex financial concepts into clear, understandable language, is a great way to improve your listening and speaking skills. By the end of today's episode, you'll feel more confident and equipped to participate in financial conversations, no matter the context. Continuing with the theme of money, let's talk about some more advanced financial vocabulary that you can use when discussing investments, savings, or even everyday financial transactions. One important term that's often used in these contexts is liquidity. This refers to how easily an asset can be converted into cash. If you need quick access to cash, you want your assets to be liquid, meaning they are easy to sell without losing value. For example, cash is highly liquid because it can be used immediately. On the other hand, something like real estate is less liquid because it may take longer to sell and might not sell for the price you expect. Understanding liquidity helps you make better financial decisions, especially when you are deciding how to allocate your savings or investments. For instance, if you're saving for an emergency fund, you would want that money to be in a highly liquid form, like a savings account, where you can access it easily without penalties. Another term that often comes up in financial discussions is diversification. This is a strategy used to reduce risk by spreading investments across different types of assets. For example, instead of putting all your money into one type of investment, like stocks, you might choose to diversify by also investing in bonds, real estate, or mutual funds. The idea is that if one investment doesn't do well, others might perform better, which can help balance your overall financial situation. I remember when I first learned about diversification, I had to decide how to invest my savings. After doing some research, I decided to invest in a mix of stocks and bonds, which seemed to offer a good balance of risk and reward. By diversifying, I felt more comfortable knowing that my investments wouldn't all be affected if the stock market suddenly dropped. In addition to these terms, there are also specific phrases that you'll encounter when discussing debt. One of these is debt-to-income ratio, which is a calculation used by lenders to determine how much of your income goes toward paying off debt. If your debt-to-income ratio is high, it means you're using a large portion of your income to pay off debts, which could make it harder for you to get approved for loans. Let's say you have a monthly income of $3,000 and you spend $1,500 paying off loans and credit card debt. Your debt-to-income ratio would be 50%, which is quite high. Financial experts generally recommend that your debt-to-income ratio should be no more than 36% to maintain good financial health. When I was applying for my first mortgage, I had to learn all about debt-to-income ratios. The bank looked at my monthly payments and compared them to my income. It was a bit of a wake-up call for me as I realized how much of my income was going toward paying off student loans and credit card bills. This motivated me to adjust my budget and focus more on paying down my debt before taking on additional loans. Understanding this concept helped me become more financially responsible, and it also helped me explain to others why it's so important to manage debt carefully. Let's now turn our attention to another topic: savings and retirement. When it comes to planning for the future, the concept of compound interest that we discussed earlier becomes even more important. But there's another critical term you should know, which is retirement accounts or pension plans. These are investment accounts designed to help you save for retirement, with certain tax benefits depending on where you live. In the United States, for example, there are accounts like 401ks and IRAs, where your money grows tax-deferred until you withdraw it in retirement. Understanding the different types of retirement accounts and how they work can help you build a strong financial foundation for the future. When I was starting my career, I knew I needed to start saving for retirement, but I wasn't sure where to begin. I talked to a financial advisor who explained the benefits of a 401k plan and how it could help me grow my savings over time, especially with the added benefit of employer contributions. By setting up automatic contributions from each paycheck, I was able to start saving without having to think about it too much. The key takeaway from this experience was that it's never too early to start saving for the future. The earlier you begin, the more you benefit from compound interest. Another area where advanced financial vocabulary comes into play is in tax planning. This involves understanding how your income and investments are taxed and finding ways to minimize the amount you owe to the government. For example, deductions and credits are ways to reduce the amount of tax you pay. A tax deduction might allow you to subtract certain expenses from your taxable income, while a tax credit directly reduces the amount of tax you owe. It's a complicated subject, but with the right knowledge, you can make smart decisions that help you keep more of your money. I've learned through the years that tax planning isn't just about filing your taxes on time. It's about understanding the system and finding ways to use the available tools to your advantage. In my own experience, I've had times when I wasn't fully aware of how tax deductions worked, and I missed out on saving money that I could have used elsewhere. For example, I didn't realize that some of my student loan payments could be deducted from my taxable income. Once I learned about tax deductions and credits, I was able to adjust my approach and save money. It's always a good idea to stay informed about your tax situation and seek advice from experts when needed. Now that we've covered various terms related to money, finance, and investing, let's discuss how you can use this knowledge to improve your English skills. When you engage with financial topics in English, you are exposed to a wide range of vocabulary that can enhance both your listening and writing skills. As you listen to podcasts, read articles, or watch videos on financial topics, try to pay attention to the specific phrases and vocabulary used. By incorporating these terms into your own conversations and writing, you will sound more fluent and confident in discussing money matters. The goal is to be able to speak naturally about financial topics, whether you're discussing your personal budget, making investment decisions, or even talking about the economy with others. The more you practice using financial vocabulary in everyday conversations, the better you'll get at understanding complex financial discussions and expressing yourself clearly. This is a critical skill, especially as you progress toward an advanced level of English. So, the next time you read an article about personal finance or listen to a podcast discussing investments, challenge yourself to learn a few new terms and use them in your own life. With continued practice, you will be well on your way to mastering English vocabulary related to money and finance. Let's dive deeper into some other critical financial concepts that will help you further expand your vocabulary and improve your understanding of how to talk about money. One important area of finance is the concept of credit scores, which is a number that lenders use to assess your financial trustworthiness. This score, usually ranging from 300 to 850, is based on your credit history, including factors like your payment history, outstanding debts, and the length of your credit history. A higher credit score means you are seen as a lower risk to lenders, and it can help you secure better interest rates on loans, credit cards, and mortgages. I remember when I first started learning about credit scores, I was surprised to see how much they impacted my financial life. It became clear to me that managing my credit responsibly was key to building a strong financial future. For example, when I applied for my first car loan, I didn't realize how much my credit score would play a role in the approval process. I was lucky to have a good score at the time, which helped me secure a loan with a low interest rate. On the other hand, a friend of mine, who had a lower credit score, ended up paying a much higher interest rate on her loan. This made me realize the importance of maintaining a good credit score and how it can affect my ability to borrow money in the future. Learning about credit scores and the factors that influence them helped me make more informed decisions about how to manage my finances and how to avoid falling into debt traps. Another key financial concept to explore is interest rates. This term refers to the amount a lender charges for borrowing money, typically expressed as a percentage of the loan amount. Interest rates can vary depending on the type of loan, your credit score, and the current state of the economy. For example, mortgage rates tend to be lower than credit card interest rates because home loans are considered less risky for lenders. I remember when I was shopping for my first mortgage, the interest rate was one of the first things I looked at. Even a small difference in the rate can make a big difference over the life of the loan. For example, a 0.5% difference in the interest rate on a $200,000 mortgage could save you thousands of dollars in interest over 30 years. It was at that moment that I truly understood the power of interest rates and how they can impact my long-term financial health. In addition to interest rates, it's also essential to understand the concept of inflation. Inflation is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services is rising, and it impacts the purchasing power of your money. For instance, if the inflation rate is 3%, the same $100 you could have spent on goods and services last year would only buy $97 worth of goods this year. Understanding inflation is important because it can affect everything from the cost of living to the return on your investments. I noticed inflation firsthand when I went to the grocery store last year and saw that the price of my regular items had gone up by about 10%. This can be frustrating, but it's something that everyone needs to take into account when managing their personal finances. When I was working on my personal budget, I realized how inflation could gradually eat into my savings if I wasn't careful. To combat this, I started investing more in stocks and other assets that tend to grow at a rate higher than inflation. While this carries some risk, the potential for higher returns was an essential factor in ensuring that my money kept up with the rising cost of living. Learning about inflation made me think more critically about where to place my money and how to plan for long-term financial goals. It also taught me the importance of regularly reviewing my budget and investment portfolio to ensure they remained in line. Another topic that's crucial to financial literacy is the concept of net worth. Your net worth is the total value of your assets, such as cash, property, and investments, minus your liabilities, such as debts and loans. It's an essential tool for measuring your overall financial health. I remember when I first sat down to calculate my net worth, I was surprised to see how much of my wealth was tied up in student loans. However, over time, as I paid off my debts and my investments grew, I began to see my net worth increase. It's important to track your net worth regularly because it gives you a clear picture of where you stand financially and helps you set goals for the future. For example, when I first started saving, I wasn't focused on my net worth, but I soon realized how important it was. It became a measure of my progress toward financial independence. Each time I paid off a loan or saw my investments grow, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I also used it as motivation to save more and be smarter with my spending. Net worth is a valuable tool for anyone looking to build wealth and improve their financial situation, as it allows you to see the bigger picture and understand how your financial decisions impact your long-term goals. Let's also consider the concept of asset allocation. This refers to how you divide your investments among different asset classes, such as stocks, bonds, real estate, and cash. The goal of asset allocation is to balance risk and reward by choosing a mix of investments that align with your financial goals and risk tolerance. For example, if you're young and have a long time horizon for investing, you might choose to invest heavily in stocks, as they tend to provide higher returns over time, although with more risk. On the other hand, if you're closer to retirement, you may want to allocate more of your assets into safer investments like bonds to protect your wealth. When I was starting to invest, I didn't understand the importance of asset allocation. I focused too much on one type of investment, which left me exposed to more risk than I realized. After learning about asset allocation, I diversified my portfolio and felt much more secure. Diversifying your assets helps to reduce risk and provides more stability over time, which is essential for building a strong financial future. As you continue to learn and improve your English skills, incorporating these advanced financial terms into your vocabulary can help you better understand discussions about money, investing, and budgeting. By listening to podcasts and reading about financial topics, you'll be exposed to this specialized vocabulary, which will make it easier to express yourself confidently in financial discussions. With practice, you'll become more comfortable using these terms in both spoken and written English, whether you're discussing your personal finances, making investment decisions, or even just talking to others about money. Financial literacy and vocabulary are essential components of becoming fluent in English, and the more you immerse yourself in these topics, the better you'll get at navigating conversations about money with ease. And continuing on with advanced financial topics, another important concept to explore is taxes. Taxes are payments that individuals and businesses must make to the government to fund public services and infrastructure, like schools, hospitals, and roads. In most countries, taxes come in many forms, such as income tax, sales tax, and property tax. Understanding how taxes work is crucial, especially when discussing personal finance. When I first started learning about taxes, I didn't realize how much they impacted my overall financial situation. For instance, income tax is usually deducted directly from your paycheck, and depending on how much you earn, you could be paying a substantial portion of your income in taxes. When I first got my job, I was surprised by how much of my salary was taken out for taxes. I had to learn about different types of taxes, such as federal and state taxes, and how they are calculated based on my income. I also discovered that tax laws can vary greatly depending on where you live. Some countries or states have higher taxes than others, which can affect your disposable income and your overall financial planning. Over time, I learned that understanding taxes is crucial for effective budgeting and for making long-term financial decisions, like whether to save or invest my money. For example, I realized that contributing to retirement accounts could help me reduce my taxable income and save on taxes in the long run. It was during this time that I also started learning about tax deductions and tax credits, which can help reduce your overall tax burden. A tax deduction reduces your taxable income, while a tax credit directly reduces the amount of tax you owe. For example, charitable donations, mortgage interest, and student loan interest are some common deductions that can lower your tax bill. On the other hand, tax credits like the Earned Income Tax Credit or Child Tax Credit directly reduce the amount of taxes you have to pay. When I made charitable contributions one year, I was able to claim them as tax deductions, which helped me pay less in taxes. Learning about tax deductions and credits was a game changer for me, as it helped me find ways to legally reduce my tax liability and keep more money in my pocket. Another critical concept to understand in personal finance is emergency funds. An emergency fund is money set aside for unexpected expenses, such as medical bills, car repairs, or a sudden job loss. Having an emergency fund is one of the most important steps you can take to ensure financial stability. I remember when I first learned about emergency funds, I was surprised by how many people don't have one. This is especially concerning because life is unpredictable, and things like a medical emergency or a sudden job loss can happen to anyone. Without an emergency fund, people may find themselves going into debt or struggling to make ends meet in times of crisis. I learned the importance of having an emergency fund after I had an unexpected car breakdown. At the time, I didn't have enough saved up to cover the repair costs, and I had to rely on credit cards to pay for it. This experience was a wake-up call for me, and I realized I needed to start building an emergency fund to avoid financial stress in the future. Since then, I've made it a priority to save at least 3 to 6 months' worth of living expenses in an easily accessible account. Knowing that I have an emergency fund has given me peace of mind, as it helps me feel prepared for whatever life may throw my way. Let's also discuss the concept of debt management. Debt is a common part of life, but managing it wisely is essential for maintaining financial health. There are different types of debt, including credit card debt, student loans, and mortgages. Each type of debt has its own interest rates and repayment terms, and it's important to understand how to manage them effectively. I remember when I was first learning about debt management, I was overwhelmed by the different options for paying off debt, like the debt snowball and debt avalanche methods. The debt snowball method involves paying off your smallest debt first and then moving on to the next smallest, while the debt avalanche method focuses on paying off. Personally, I tried the debt snowball method when I had a few small credit card balances. It gave me a sense of accomplishment when I paid off one debt and moved on to the next. However, over time, I realized that the debt avalanche method would save me more money and interest, so I switched to that approach. Understanding how to manage debt has been a critical skill for me, as it helps me make smarter financial decisions. I've also learned the importance of making regular payments and avoiding late fees, as they can significantly impact my credit score and overall financial health. Learning about debt management not only helped me get out of debt faster, but also taught me how to avoid accumulating debt in the future. In addition to these financial concepts, it's essential to understand the role of investing in building wealth. Investing is the process of using your money to generate returns over time. The most common types of investments include stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and real estate. Investing is an essential part of achieving long-term financial goals, such as retirement, buying a home, or funding your children's education. I first started learning about investing when I wanted to secure my financial future. Initially, I was intimidated by the idea of investing, as it seemed complicated and risky. But over time, I realized that investing is one of the best ways to grow wealth, especially when you start early and take a long-term approach. When I first started investing, I began by putting money into a retirement account, like a 401k, which offered tax benefits. I also invested in low-cost index funds, which track the performance of the stock market. Although the stock market can be volatile in the short term, I learned that long-term investing tends to yield positive results. Investing allowed me to build wealth and stay on track to achieve my financial goals. I also learned the importance of diversifying my investments to reduce risk. Diversifying means spreading your investments across different asset classes, such as stocks, bonds, and real estate, to ensure that your portfolio isn't overly exposed to any one risk. As you continue to improve your English, understanding, these advanced financial topics will help you expand your vocabulary and become more confident in discussing money and investments. By incorporating these terms into your language practice, you'll be able to engage in more complex financial conversations and better understand real-world financial situations. Whether you're discussing personal finance with friends or analyzing financial news, these concepts will empower you to navigate conversations about money with ease and precision. Moreover, by learning about financial topics in English, you're not only improving your language skills, but also gaining valuable knowledge that can help you make better financial decisions in the future. Continuing on the topic of advanced financial discussions, let's delve deeper into another important concept: credit scores and how they affect your financial life. Your credit score is a numerical representation of your credit worthiness. It's a number that lenders use to determine how likely you are to repay a loan or credit card debt. The higher your credit score, the more likely you are to get approved for loans and credit with better terms, such as lower interest rates. When I first learned about credit scores, I didn't realize how important they were. For years, I had a decent score, but I didn't fully understand how it worked or why it mattered. It wasn't until I applied for a mortgage that I really started to pay attention to my credit score. I remember being shocked when I was told that my score was a little lower than I expected. I had made some late payments on a credit card in the past, and those had affected my score. Since then, I've worked hard to improve my credit by making timely payments and paying off debt. One thing I learned about credit scores is that they are based on several factors, including payment history, the amount of debt you owe, the length of your credit history, types of credit accounts, and recent credit inquiries. Each of these factors can have a significant impact on your score, and understanding them is crucial for maintaining good credit. For example, I learned that keeping credit card balances low and paying off debt quickly can improve my score over time. Another important lesson I learned about credit scores is that they can affect more than just loans. For example, many landlords check your credit score before renting to you, and insurance companies may use it to determine your premium rates. Having a good credit score can save you a lot of money in the long run, as it can result in lower interest rates, better loan terms, and even discounts on insurance premiums. I realized that managing my credit was not just about getting approved for loans. It was about securing a better financial future and paying less in interest over time. Now, let's talk about savings. Saving money is a fundamental aspect of managing your finances, and it's essential to have a savings plan for both short-term and long-term goals. Many people, including myself, learn the importance of saving the hard way. A few years ago, I found myself in a situation where I needed money quickly for an unexpected expense, but I didn't have enough savings to cover it. I had to rely on credit cards and loans to pay for the expense, and that put me in a difficult financial position. From that experience, I learned the importance of setting aside money regularly for emergencies and future goals. To start saving, it's important to create a budget and set specific savings goals. For example, I began by saving a small percentage of my income each month. Over time, I increased the amount I saved and built an emergency fund. I also started saving for larger goals, like a vacation and a down payment on a house. One of the things that helped me stay on track with my savings was setting up automatic transfers to my savings account. This way, I didn't have to think about saving. The money was automatically set aside before I could spend it. It's also important to understand the difference between short-term savings and long-term savings. Short-term savings are typically for goals that you plan to achieve within the next few months or years, such as buying a car or going on vacation. Long-term savings, on the other hand, are for bigger goals that may take years to achieve, like retirement or buying a home. I learned that both types of savings are important, and having a clear strategy for each can help you achieve your financial goals more effectively. When it comes to saving for the long term, investing is often a crucial part of the process. For example, retirement accounts like a 401k or an individual retirement account, IRA, allow you to save for retirement while taking advantage of tax benefits. I started contributing to my 401k as soon as I was eligible, and over time, I learned how compound interest could help my savings grow faster. Compound interest means that you earn interest on both the original amount you invested and the interest that accumulates over time. This can significantly increase the value of your savings over the long term, especially if you start investing early. While saving for retirement is important, I also learned about the importance of saving for other long-term goals. For example, I started saving for a down payment on a house. The more I learned about the housing market and mortgages, the more I realized how important it was to have a sizable down payment to secure a good mortgage rate. By saving consistently and making smart financial choices, I was able to reach my goal of buying a home sooner than I expected. In addition to saving and investing, another important concept is budgeting. A budget is a plan for how you manage your money. It involves tracking your income and expenses to ensure that you are spending within your means and saving for the future. Budgeting is something that I used to find difficult, but once I understood its importance, it became a powerful tool for managing my finances. I started by listing all of my sources of income and all of my expenses, including fixed costs like rent and utilities, as well as variable costs like groceries and entertainment. I also learned to categorize my expenses and prioritize my spending. For example, I made sure to allocate money for savings and emergency funds before spending on non-essential items. Over time, I learned that budgeting helped me make smarter financial decisions, avoid unnecessary debt, and stay on track to achieve my financial goals. One thing I found helpful in budgeting is using apps and tools that track your spending automatically. These tools give you an overview of where your money is going and can help you spot areas where you can cut back and save more. Lastly, let's talk about financial independence. Financial independence means having enough income and assets to support your lifestyle without relying on a paycheck. It's a goal that many people strive for, and it's something I've been working towards for a long time. The path to financial independence typically involves saving a significant portion of your income, reducing debt, and investing wisely. One of the key lessons I've learned about financial independence is that it's not just about making more money, it's about how you manage and allocate your money. I started by focusing on reducing my living expenses and increasing my savings rate. I also made sure to invest in assets that could generate passive income, such as rental properties and stocks. Over time, my investments started to pay off, and I became more confident in my ability to achieve financial independence. Although it's a long-term goal, I've learned that the journey to financial independence can be incredibly rewarding. By making smart financial choices and planning for the future, anyone can work towards achieving financial freedom and enjoying a more secure and fulfilling life. This episode, as you can see, has covered a wide range of advanced financial concepts. By learning and practicing these terms, you will not only improve your English listening skills, but also gain a deeper understanding of personal finance. Whether you're discussing money with friends, family, or colleagues, being able to use these terms confidently will help you communicate effectively in real-world situations. Understanding financial literacy and improving your financial vocabulary can significantly impact how you make decisions in your everyday life. In our modern world, financial discussions are happening all around us, from casual talks at the coffee shop to serious conversations in the office. The more familiar you become with key financial terms and concepts, the more equipped you'll be to navigate these conversations confidently. Over time, I realized that financial knowledge doesn't just apply to big decisions like buying a house or investing in the stock market. It affects small, everyday choices too. For example, let's say you're deciding whether to buy a new phone or save the money for a future vacation. Without an understanding of basic financial concepts like budgeting, opportunity cost, or savings goals, this decision could be harder than it needs to be. By weighing the cost of the phone against your savings goals or looking at it through the lens of opportunity cost, what you are giving up by choosing the phone over the vacation, the decision becomes clearer. I once faced a similar situation when I wanted to purchase an expensive gadget but realized that it would delay my ability to go on a vacation I had been planning for months. By applying these financial principles, I made a more informed decision that aligned with my long-term goals. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned throughout my journey with money is the concept of delayed gratification. It's the idea that sacrificing something in the short term can lead to greater rewards in the future. For example, when I was in my early 20s, I often bought things I didn't really need, just because they were on sale or because I wanted to feel good in the moment. However, as I started learning more about personal finance, I realized that saving that money instead of spending it could lead to more significant opportunities later on, like buying my first car or building an emergency fund. Delayed gratification is tough, especially in a world where we're constantly encouraged to spend now and pay later. But once you experience the benefits of saving and investing for the future, it becomes easier to delay that immediate satisfaction. Now let's talk about investing in the traditional sense, buying stocks, bonds, or mutual funds. Investing is one of the most powerful ways to grow wealth over time, and it's something I wish I had learned about sooner. I used to think that investing was only for the wealthy or those with specialized knowledge. But once I understood the basics of how investing works and the concept of compound interest, I realized that anyone can invest, regardless of their income level. The idea is to start small and be consistent. Even if you're only able to invest a small portion of your income each month, over time, that money will grow and compound, eventually leading to larger returns. My first investment experience was with a simple index fund, which is a type of mutual fund that tracks a market index, like the S&P 500. Initially, I was intimidated by the stock market and unsure where to start, but I learned that index funds are an excellent choice for beginners because they offer low fees, diversification, and long-term growth potential. Watching my investment grow over the years has been incredibly rewarding, and it has given me the confidence to explore other investment opportunities. It's important to remember that investing isn't about trying to get rich quickly. It's about building wealth steadily over time. By investing early and consistently, you can take advantage of the power of compound interest, which is the process of earning returns on both the money you've invested and the interest those investments generate. On the other hand, debt is a financial concept that can be incredibly harmful if not managed properly. Debt can provide short-term relief or enable you to make a big purchase, like buying a car or paying for an education. However, if not carefully managed, debt can quickly spiral out of control and cause long-term financial problems. I once had a lot of debt, primarily from student loans and credit cards. At first, I didn't realize how much this debt was impacting my finances, until I started paying attention to the interest rates. The more debt you have, the more you pay in interest, which means you end up paying much more than the original amount you borrowed. To get out of debt, it's essential to create a strategy for paying it off. One approach that worked for me was the debt snowball method, where you focus on paying off the smallest debt first, then move on to the next largest, and so on. The key to this method is the psychological benefit of gaining momentum as you pay off each debt. It can be very motivating to see your debts disappear one by one. Another approach is the debt avalanche method, which involves paying off debts with the highest interest rates first. This strategy can save you money in the long run, but it can be less motivating because it might take longer to pay off the first debt. Once I paid off my credit card debt, I focused on building an emergency fund, which is a savings cushion for unexpected expenses. Having an emergency fund is one of the most important steps you can take to avoid going into more debt in the future. The goal is to have enough money saved up to cover at least 3 to 6 months' worth of living expenses in case of an emergency, such as a medical issue, car repair, or job loss. This fund acts as a safety net, giving you peace of mind knowing that you won't have to rely on credit cards or loans in a crisis. Saving and investing are not just for the wealthy or financially savvy. They are tools that everyone can use to improve their financial future. Whether you're saving for a vacation, planning for retirement, or paying off debt, having a clear financial plan and sticking to it can help you achieve your goals and gain financial freedom. Remember, financial literacy is a lifelong journey, and the more you learn and apply, the more empowered you'll feel when making financial decisions. So, take control of your finances today and start applying these concepts to your life. By improving your financial knowledge and vocabulary, you'll not only strengthen your English language skills, but you'll also gain the confidence to engage in meaningful financial discussions in English, making your everyday conversations richer and more. As you continue to develop your understanding of financial vocabulary, it's important to recognize how interconnected money is to every aspect of life. Financial discussions aren't just limited to talking about investments or savings. They permeate conversations about career advancement, lifestyle choices, and even relationships. Let me share a personal story that highlights this. A few years ago, I found myself in a conversation with a close friend about work-life balance. She was debating whether to take a higher-paying job that required more hours or to stay in her current role with more flexible hours but a lower salary. This is a conversation many of us face at different stages of our careers. We often have to make choices that involve financial trade-offs, and the key to making an informed decision is understanding how to evaluate these options through a financial lens. At first, my friend was struggling with the idea of giving up her free time for more money, and I understood her dilemma. However, we both realized that the answer wasn't just about the salary. It was about how each option aligned with her values and long-term goals. If she took the higher-paying job, would it lead to greater career advancement and open more doors in the future? Or would the stress and extra hours hinder her ability to enjoy her personal life? This decision-making process led us to discuss several financial terms, such as opportunity cost, the potential benefit lost when choosing one option over another, and return on investment, the benefit gained relative to the cost. These concepts aren't just for people making big investment decisions. They apply to everyday life and help us make choices that improve both our financial and personal well-being. The key takeaway from that conversation was that money isn't the only factor that determines success. We use the idea of value to guide our discussion. When we talk about value, we are considering both the tangible and intangible aspects of a decision. For instance, taking a job with a higher salary might offer a more comfortable lifestyle, but it could also mean sacrificing time with family or pursuing personal interests. On the other hand, choosing a lower-paying job with more flexibility might not allow for the same lifestyle, but it could lead to a greater sense of well-being and happiness in the long run. These are the kinds of conversations that happen when you gain a solid understanding of financial terms and how they apply to life decisions. After that conversation, my friend was able to make a decision that was right for her. She took the main time to consider what she truly valued, and in the end, she chose the job that offered more time for herself and her family, even though it meant less money. This decision wasn't about being right or wrong in a financial sense. It was about making an informed choice based on her priorities. This is where financial literacy becomes incredibly important. It gives you the tools to make choices that align with your personal values, and in turn helps you feel more confident in your decisions. One financial concept that often gets overlooked is cash flow, which is the movement of money in and out of your life. When you're budgeting or planning your finances, it's essential to understand your income and expenses. This will help you avoid situations where you spend more than you earn, which can lead to debt and financial stress. For example, when I first started budgeting, I realized that while I was saving some money each month, I was also spending a lot on things that didn't add much value to my life, like expensive coffees or eating out too often. By tracking my cash flow, I was able to identify areas where I could cut back and redirect that money into more meaningful savings or investments. Understanding cash flow is a key step in taking control of your finances and ensuring that you're living within your means. Another critical concept to grasp is credit, which is the ability to borrow money with the promise of paying it back later. In many countries, credit is essential for making major purchases, such as buying a home or car. However, it can also be a double-edged sword if not managed wisely. I used to be someone who relied heavily on credit cards for convenience, and while it was useful in emergencies, I quickly found myself racking up interest charges that I wasn't fully prepared for. It wasn't until I took the time to educate myself about how interest rates work and how to manage debt responsibly that I began to get a handle on my financial situation. By paying off my credit cards in full each month and avoiding unnecessary debt, I was able to save money on interest and build. It's important to recognize the value of building an emergency fund. An emergency fund is money set aside for unexpected expenses, such as medical bills, car repairs, or a sudden job loss. Without an emergency fund, you might find yourself turning to credit cards or loans when unexpected costs arise, which can lead to further financial strain. I vividly remember the time my car broke down unexpectedly, and I had to pay for an expensive repair. Fortunately, I had set aside an emergency fund that covered the cost without putting me into debt. Building an emergency fund takes time, but it's an essential step toward financial security. The next important concept is investing, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a way to grow your wealth over time. There are many ways to invest, including stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and real estate. However, investing is not a get-rich-quick strategy. It's about making long-term decisions that will help you build wealth over time. For instance, I began investing in low-cost index funds, which are a great option for beginners. These funds track the performance of the overall stock market, providing a diversified portfolio with lower risk compared to individual stocks. While it may take several years to see significant returns, the key is to stay consistent and let the power of compound interest work in your favor. Compound interest allows you to earn interest on both your initial investment and the interest that accrues over time, which can significantly increase the value of your investments in the long run. Understanding these concepts and incorporating them into your financial decisions can drastically change the way you approach money. Not only will it help you make smarter, more informed decisions, but it will also give you the confidence to navigate financial conversations in English. As you continue to develop your vocabulary around money and finance, you'll find that you can engage in more meaningful discussions, whether you're talking to friends, family, or colleagues. This will not only improve your financial literacy, but also enhance your overall communication skills, allowing you to articulate your thoughts clearly and confidently in English. I hope this episode has given you valuable insights into the world of finance and how it relates to everyday English conversations. By learning the key vocabulary and phrases related to money, savings, budgeting, and investing, you're not only improving your financial knowledge, but also enhancing your ability to speak and write about these topics with confidence. Remember, financial literacy isn't just for experts. It's something everyone can learn and benefit from. Whether you're saving for the future, managing your debt, or planning for a major purchase, understanding the terms and strategies discussed today will empower you to make more informed decisions. And as you continue to engage with these concepts, you'll find that your English listening, speaking, and writing skills also improve. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. Keep practicing, stay curious, and remember, every conversation is an opportunity to learn something new.